The boardroom at the Prescott estate hadn't changed since 1993. Same polished oak table, same dusty portraits of family men pretending to be visionaries. I used to stare at those faces as a kid, wondering if I'd ever be in one. I never was. My name is Lauren Prescott. Around here, they call me the one who left. I'm 33 now, but to them, I'm still the girl who walked away from the family wine empire in Napa to start a tech venture that was supposed to crash and burn. Today, I was summoned back for an urgent family meeting, supposedly about financial restructuring. But what they didn't know, what they never even bothered to suspect, was that the Prescott legacy they were so desperate to save had already been sold piece by piece right out from under them, to me. I took a seat at the far end of the table, wearing a simple navy blazer, watching my Uncle Robert fumble through his outdated spreadsheets and doom-filled projections. The numbers were terrible. He groaned, "We're bleeding." I listened quietly, letting them drown in their own denial. Every insult they had ever thrown was about to come back with a signature. They thought I was here to listen. They had no idea what I'd come to take back. 5 years ago, they offered me a title director of brand strategy. It sounded impressive on paper, but it came with no real authority, no decision-making power. It was a ceremonial leash designed to keep me quiet while my cousins played executive with grandfather's fortune. I remember sitting in that same boardroom across from Uncle Robert, listening to him explain how the company needed fresh ideas from the next generation, as long as those ideas didn't rock the boat. I turned it down that same afternoon, took the trust fund they were so sure I'd squander, and walked out of that estate with nothing but a plan and a belief that I didn't need to play their game to win. I moved into a shoebox apartment in San Francisco and launched a startup from a co-working space. I called it Arcline Strategies. To the outside world, it was just another hopeful tech firm in a sea of 1,000. But what I built in silence with no name behind me but my own was a quiet empire. I didn't go public, didn't take investor money. I bought small dying companies with strong bones and overlooked potential. I learned to read between the numbers. I taught myself to hunt what others threw away. By the 3rd year, Arcline had absorbed 5 businesses. By the 4th, 12. Then came the acquisitions through shell corporations and holding firms. Prescott & Co. had so many subsidiaries and outdated structures that it took them years to notice someone was slowly buying them out. That someone was me. As Uncle Robert scolded the room for falling profits, my cousin Brent, fresh from business school, and already a VP, chimed in with generic optimism. "It's just a market correction," he said, flipping his pen like it was a baton. I stayed silent. Across the table, my sister Vanessa was tapping distractedly on her phone, not even pretending to care. "The logistics division is garbage," she muttered. "We should dump it and focus on the Vineyard brand." I nearly smiled. The logistics arm was Arcline's crown jewel, already operating under our AI-enhanced drone fleet and attracting interest from 2 major West Coast investors. They had no idea that the most worthless part of their empire was about to make national headlines. "What's funny?" Uncle Robert snapped, catching the smirk I tried to suppress. His voice silenced the room. Even Vanessa looked up. "Nothing," I replied, steady. "Just thinking through options." He scoffed. "You, what options could you possibly offer?" Brent leaned back, smirking. "She runs some little app company downtown. Let's stick to real business." My father, seated in the corner, like a forgotten shadow, shifted uneasily. He had stepped down as CEO last spring, surrendering control to his older brother. When I tried to warn him about the structural cracks, he told me I was being dramatic. He never listened. No one did. But now they were going to. Because in exactly 3 minutes, the assistant standing outside the boardroom would receive a phone call. and with it the illusion of their control would begin to fall apart. The ticking of the antique wall clock was the only sound as the tension thickened. I glanced at my watch, 2 minutes left. Outside that door, a call was being routed through 3 time zones, an executive board dialing into a family boardroom none of them had ever set foot in. My hands rested calmly in my lap, but my heart beat like a war drum. Not from fear, from anticipation. This moment had lived in my mind for years, not as revenge, but as proof that I wasn't wrong to walk away, that I wasn't some failure clinging to pride, that I saw something they refused to see. Maybe we should at least hear her out, my father said suddenly, his voice soft but shaking. It was the first time he had spoken in over an hour. All eyes turned. Robert raised an eyebrow. Hear her out, Max. Your daughter gave up her seat at this table. She chose to play startup in San Francisco instead of honoring her family's legacy. That was her choice. My father didn't reply. He just looked at me, and for the first time, it wasn't disappointment in his eyes. It was uncertainty, doubt. I could work with that. Arkline has done well, he murmured. Maybe she sees something we don't. Brent laughed. You're kidding, right? Arkline's just a shell, probably backed by her boyfriend's seed money. She doesn't even have office space. I almost laughed out loud. My offices span 3 floors of Monarch Tower. I kept the shared workspace as a front, a convenient lie that let them keep dismissing me while I built a company that now had more market influence than the entire Prescott portfolio. That logistics division you all want to toss, I said slowly, it's outperforming the Vineyard brand by 40%. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. According to who? According to the last 6 quarters. If you read the reports. Robert slammed his hand on the table. Enough. We're not wasting time with vanity metrics and garage business talk. You walked away, Lauren. You don't get to come back now and tell us how to fix things. I stood, calmly, deliberately. The weight of the moment settled in my spine. I'm not telling you how to fix it, I said, my voice steady. I already did, and right then the door flew open. Evelyn Roberts' longtime assistant stood pale in the doorway, clutching her phone like it had burned her hand. Sir, she said, voice trembling. There's a call from the Prescott board. It's urgent. You need to take it now. Robert snatched the phone, irritated. Who the hell? He stopped. His face changed color. What? That's impossible. He looked around the table as if someone had poisoned his drink. Who is Arkline Global Holdings? I stepped forward. That's me. Their world tilted. My father's jaw dropped. Vanessa's tablet slipped from her hand, and Brent for once was speechless. I wasn't the outsider anymore. I was the one holding the keys, and they were just beginning to realize the door they'd slammed shut was now mine to lock or open. For a moment, no one moved. The silence in the room was heavy, like the breath before a storm. Robert stared at the phone still clutched in his hand, as if willing it to say something else, something that would make this all go away. But it wouldn't. The truth had arrived, and it wasn't leaving quietly. I looked at each of them, Vanessa pale and blinking fast, Brent frozen mid-thought, and my father stunned, but visibly trying to piece it all together. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the dawning recognition that the daughter he dismissed was no longer looking for his approval. She was giving orders now. This is a joke. Brent finally managed his voice hoarse. This can't be real. Arkline is... You said it was just a consulting firm. I said it was small, I replied. You assumed that meant powerless. Robert stood slowly shaking his head, the phone still pressed to his ear, but forgotten. This is corporate theft, insider manipulation. We'll fight it. I smiled, not mocking, not cruel, just tired. There's nothing to fight. Every acquisition was legal, every holding entity accounted for. You were too distracted to see it happening. Vanessa's voice cracked as she whispered, "What happens now?" I turned to her. Now the board finalizes my appointment as CEO in a meeting starting in 15 minutes. A press release is scheduled for noon, and this company, your legacy is no longer being run into the ground. My father stood then. He didn't speak right away. He just stared at me like I was someone he'd never really seen before. "You planned this," he said quietly. "All of it." "Not revenge," I said. "Rebuild. At the cost of your family." Robert barked, stepping forward, face red and trembling. "We are still your family." I met his stare with one of my own. "Were you family when you called me worthless? When you erased every proposal I made? When you handed executive power to Brent before I even graduated?" His mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. That was the thing about people like Robert. They only respected strength once it stood tall in front of them, undeniable and unafraid. "You think you can just take over and fix this?" Brent snapped. "You think you know this company better than we do?" "No," I said, walking slowly to the head of the table, the chair that had always been out of reach. "I know I can fix it, because I've already started." I set down my laptop and connected it to the room's display. The Arcline dashboard appeared growth charts, subsidiary breakdowns, expansion blueprints already in motion. Vanessa covered her mouth. My father sat down heavily. "We need time," he said. "We need to talk." "That time passed years ago," I replied. Outside, the boardroom doors remained open. I could see the Arcline transition team assembling. Behind them, security. Because some transitions require more than words, and not everyone was going to take the news quietly. I could feel the shift in the air the moment I opened the restructuring files. The same people who once scoffed at my every word now sat frozen, caught between disbelief and panic. Robert dropped into his chair like the weight of it all had finally hit him. Brent was already texting someone, likely a lawyer. Vanessa kept glancing toward the exit, but her pride wouldn't let her move. I stood at the head of the table, the place that had never been offered to me, the one I had to take for myself. I wasn't angry anymore. I had moved past that. What I felt now was something deeper, something sharper. Relief, maybe, closure, or perhaps just the quiet triumph of knowing I no longer needed their permission to lead. "This restructuring plan is just the beginning," I said, clicking through the slides. "We'll start with logistics. It's our most undervalued asset. Under Arcline, we've already deployed AI-driven operations that cut delivery costs by 32% in the last quarter alone. That division will lead the turnaround. You can't just fire people and rename everything," Brent said, standing now, his voice rising. "There are contracts. There are rules, and they've all been reviewed," I replied calmly. "The legal groundwork was done months ago. Your position as vice president has been dissolved effective immediately. So has Vanessa's creative strategy title." "You can't do that," Vanessa whispered. "I already have," I said. "The board approved the restructuring contingent on full transition authority." "My authority." Robert slammed a hand on the table. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said evenly. "This family tore itself apart when it chose tradition over talent, silence over ideas, and control over vision. I'm just cleaning up the mess." My father sat quietly through it all, barely blinking. I knew what he was thinking. I had warned him once gently, then twice with evidence. He hadn't stood up for me then. Now he didn't know how to. "Lauren," he said finally, "maybe we can work together. You don't have to do it like this." I looked at him for a long moment. I wanted to believe he meant it, that he finally saw me, not as a rebellious daughter, but as the woman who saved the company he helped build. "I gave you that chance," I said softly. "Years ago. You chose Robert. You chose silence. He looked away. Outside the hallway was stirring. I could see movement now, more Arcline staff arriving. My transition director stood with a clipboard, conferring with legal and HR. Then Evelyn appeared again, her face tense. "Miss Prescott," she said, voice low, "the media's already calling. CNBC wants a statement. Bloomberg is holding a slot for a live reaction." I closed my laptop and looked around the room one last time. This wasn't a takeover. This was a reckoning, and the world was about to watch it unfold. The boardroom was unraveling. Robert paced like a man clinging to the last pieces of his kingdom, muttering legal threats that no one took seriously. Brent was on the phone, voice low and frantic, trying to reach someone who might reverse what was already set in stone. Vanessa stared blankly at the Arcline presentation still glowing on the screen, as if it had rewritten reality right in front of her eyes. I stayed silent for a moment, letting it all settle. The storm I had spent years preparing for was here, and I wasn't the one caught in it. I walked to the window, the morning sun casting long shadows across the boardroom floor. Outside, the vineyard stretched toward the horizon. To them it was legacy. To me, it was history. Beautiful, yes, but stuck in time. "Lauren," my father said quietly behind me. I didn't turn to him yet. "This isn't how I wanted things to go," he continued. "It never had to be like this." I turned slowly, met his eyes. "Then why didn't you stop it?" He had no answer. Because there wasn't one. He had stood by while Robert dismissed me, while Brent was handed promotions I'd earned twice over, while Vanessa undermined my work behind my back. He had chosen comfort over conflict. I had chosen risk. "You think this company can survive without us?" Brent said suddenly, his voice edged with desperation. "We are the Prescotts. You can't just erase that." "I'm not erasing it," I replied. "I'm replacing it with something that actually works." He stepped toward me, eyes burning. "You're destroying your own name." I smiled faintly. "I'm building one that means something." The door opened again. Catherine, my assistant from Arcline, entered with a binder tucked under her arm. She handed it to me without a word. Inside were signed confirmations, restructured departments, revoked titles, newly appointed leadership. Everything that once made this boardroom powerful was now just paper. "These go into effect immediately," I announced. HR will escort all departing executives out of the building by end of day. Offices will be reassigned. Security access will change at noon. Vanessa stood abruptly. "You're actually serious." "I've never been more serious," I said. She let out a bitter laugh. "You've wanted this all along, to take us down." "No," I said simply. "I wanted to be heard. You left me no other way." Just then, Catherine's phone buzzed. She stepped forward. "The press conference is live in 5 minutes. Do you want to handle the statement yourself?" I looked around the room. My family sat in varying stages of disbelief, denial, and quiet rage. But none of it mattered now. I nodded. Yes, it's time they hear from someone they called irrelevant. As I walked toward the media briefing room, I heard Robert whisper behind me, "What have we done?" And though I didn't answer, I knew exactly what he'd done. He underestimated me. They all had. The cameras were already rolling when I stepped up to the podium. A wall of lights and microphones greeted me like a long-awaited moment, finally catching up with time. Reporters from every major outlet were packed into the press room, some whispering into headsets, others scribbling notes as I adjusted the microphone. I took a breath, not to steady my nerves, but to mark the gravity of this turning point. "Good morning," I began, voice calm and measured. "Today marks a new chapter, not just for Prescott & Co., but for every company still shackled to outdated traditions and inherited power." I saw a few raised eyebrows. I let them linger. The board has approved a full leadership transition. Effective immediately, I am assuming the role of Chief Executive Officer. Our new direction will focus on innovation, transparency, and merit. We're done rewarding last names over performance. We're done clinging to nostalgia while the world moves forward. There was a buzz in the room, fingers flying over keys. I continued unwavering. The Prescott name will remain, but what it stands for is about to change. Legacy built on arrogance and entitlement is no legacy worth saving. I paused just long enough for the words to sink in. We will become a company where talent leads, where voices matter, and where reinvention is our tradition. When the questions came, I answered them directly without spinning. I named the divisions. We would restructure the markets. We were entering the technologies already being deployed. I didn't mention my family by name. I didn't have to. The press had already connected the dots. Catherine handed me a tablet with real-time feedback. Headlines were going live before I even stepped off the stage. Prescott heiress reclaims empire. Startup CEO ousts old guard in stunning turnaround. From worthless to CEO, the quiet rise of Lauren Prescott. As I walked back toward the boardroom, I passed the portraits on the wall, faded oil paintings of Prescott men in stiff suits, all staring down with pride that had long since gone stale. Soon those would come down, not out of spite, out of necessity. I turned the corner and stopped in my tracks. Brent stood at the door to his office, well, his former office, staring through the glass. His hands were in his pockets, and for the first time he looked small. "Come to beg for a favor?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "I came to ask if you really think this makes you better than us." I didn't smile. "No, I think it makes me the one who refused to stay silent." He looked down, then away. "We were wrong about you." I nodded. "Yes, you were." Behind us, security was escorting Vanessa out. Her head was high, but her eyes gave her away. I watched her disappear around the corner, and then Brent turned back to me and asked, "So what happens to us now?" I didn't answer yet, because what happened next wasn't just about them. It was about everything we'd buried for years, and now it was coming to the surface. What happens now? The question lingered long after Brent had walked away, leaving only the faint sound of his footsteps fading down the marble corridor. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door to his former office, a place I had once been too afraid to even knock on. Now it was empty, like so much of what they had built. When I finally stepped inside, I didn't sit behind the desk. I stood by the window instead, letting the light pour in. From this vantage point, I could see the edge of the vineyard, the winding rows of vines stretching out like old stories, comforting, familiar, and no longer mine to carry forward. I opened the audit files on the tablet Catherine had given me. Page after page confirmed what I had long suspected. Personal expenses charged to the company, fake consulting contracts awarded to friends, shell accounts, insider trading. I scrolled in silence. Gerald Uncle Robert had siphoned off millions over the years. Vanessa had padded payrolls with friends who never worked a single day. Brent had used boardroom information to trade stock ahead of quarterly drops, all of it laid out in black and white. And through it all, my father had signed off on budgets chosen to look the other way, trusted his brother more than his own daughter. The final document was a criminal referral draft from our legal team to the SEC. All it needed was my signature. I held the stylus for a long time, not because I had doubts, but because I knew what this would mean. The Prescott name would be dragged through courtrooms and headlines. There would be no saving their reputations, not this time. But justice didn't care about last names. It cared about accountability. And so did I. My hand didn't shake when I signed. Afterward, I walked back to my new office, the one that used to belong to my father. He hadn't returned since the press conference. A photo of the family taken on Christmas years ago still sat on the corner of the desk. In it, everyone was smiling, standing close, except me. I was slightly off to the side, as if I already knew I didn't belong. Or maybe I was just preparing. I picked up the frame, studied it, then set it face down. Catherine appeared in the doorway. "Lauren," she said softly, "Gerald's sentencing is set for next week. Will you be attending?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked out the window at the Napa skyline, my thoughts miles away. Gerald would be in court. Vanessa was trying to sell her penthouse. Brent had started applying to firms he used to mock. My family, the ones who had ruled over this company, like monarchs, were now scattered, crumbling under the weight of their own choices. "No," I said finally. "I have work to do." Catherine nodded, but as she turned to leave, she paused. "The new boardroom portraits just arrived. Would you like me to hang them?" I didn't respond at first. I thought about those old oil paintings staring down like gatekeepers. Then I turned to her. "Take the old ones down," I said quietly. "This isn't their company anymore. It's something else, something better." That evening, long after the building had emptied and the sun dipped behind the vineyard hills, I stood alone in the boardroom. The walls were bare now. No more portraits of men clinging to a past they refused to question. In their place would hang new faces, not bound by blood, but by merit. People who earned their place, who saw the future and weren't afraid to shape it. I looked around and realized the silence no longer felt cold. It felt earned. This room once silenced me. Now it echoed with my voice. The betrayal I endured, the loyalty I gave without return, had all led me here not broken, but rebuilt. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had found something greater clarity. Sometimes it's not about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right, even when no one is watching. Because in the ashes of disappointment, we find the blueprint for something far more honest. Growth begins where illusion ends. So if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told your voice didn't matter, know this loyalty to yourself is the beginning of everything. I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and tell me how you rose after they counted you out. And if you're building your own comeback, don't do it alone. Subscribe and let's rise together.